I am Mansi and I work as a cost designer with the Firki team. I will help you navigate the webinar today. We will now watch a short video that will help us introduce the features on the Firki website. I request Bala to play this video.
Content for teachers to support them in their professional development as well as in their classrooms, and is free of charge and easy to use. In order to access the portal, type firki.co and you will be directed to the Firki website. To register on Firki, fill in a brief registration form. You can also sign in through your Google account. You will have to use your email ID in order to create an account on our website. This account is again free to create and use. Once you create your account and log in with your credentials, you will be directed to the dashboard. The dashboard would have notifications related to your profile, course progress, time spent, and your Firki discussion groups. To access different pedagogical courses, you can click on the courses link on the top left of the screen. The courses page allows you to choose courses based on difficulty level and category. The courses are also available in different regional languages. Feel free to browse the different courses we have in our catalog using the search bar above. Each Firki course is designed using the FITS model that stands for Feel, Imagine, Do, and Share. The Feel section of the course helps you identify your current practices. The Imagine section defines the practices that one should follow to improve teaching and learning outcomes. A detailed description of strategies are highlighted under the Do section that one can implement in the classroom and with their students. At last, the Share section talks about ways in which one can share their learnings with each other. Each course has also a set of reflection questions as part of the assessment section. Along with the course material, each Firki course also contains a learning circle plan and journal pages. A learning circle plan helps the coaches and mentors conducting the offline learning circles to discuss and share learnings from the course. A journal page summarizes the course with important points. We are adding new courses every month, so keep watching this space. Next up, we have the webinars page that is also accessible from the top left of the screen. On this page, you will find information about the upcoming webinars. If you scroll down, you will find a bunch of resources from our older webinars. These resources will include video recordings of the webinar itself, notes from the webinar, the presentation used by our speaker, and other resources on the topic covered. Do feel free to browse this section at your leisure. The final page to look out for is the resources page, also to be found at the top left corner of your screen. This page houses and will house resources from several of our partner organizations, such as the British Council, Khan Academy, Storyweaver, Pratham Books, and more. We are in the process of adding to the list, and you can easily filter resources by partners, grades or standard, and the subject of instruction. We hope you find value in using these resources in your practice as teachers and educators. Finally, you can find the Firki app on the Play Store and can access these courses, resources, and webinars through your phone. So download our app and stay connected to teaching and learning on the go.
Thank you for that. I hope the video helped you in knowing more about Firki. If you have questions around any of the features highlighted in the video, please write to us at contactfirki@teachforindia.org. The link will shortly be pasted in the chat window. With that, let's move on to the webinar at hand today. Thank you for taking the time to join us in this discussion. In designing this and other webinars throughout the year, the Firki team is hoping that we can disseminate meaningful knowledge and skills that take us closer to our goal of improving the quality of education in Indian classrooms. In this webinar, we'll discuss some activities that teachers can adopt and adapt for their learners to make the English language classroom more interactive and less intimidating. These activities are based on language learning approaches such as translanguaging, code switching, and translation. And they also hone students' 21st century skills of critical thinking and problem solving. Now let me introduce the speakers for the day. Sujata Bhosle, is an academic manager for schools, English and skills at British Council and works on the teacher development projects in North India. She is a CELTA certified teacher and has a master's degree in elementary education from Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai. Ashleisha Rodriguez D'Souza is a teacher trainer and teacher of English and works as a training consultant with the British Council. As a CELTA certified teacher and trainer, she has worked on several education projects across India to train teachers in language pedagogy and help improve learning and teaching in primary and secondary schools. We welcome both of our speakers to the webinar today. And this now brings us to the norms for the webinar. For all our speakers, please use raise hands feature if the speaker asks a question and one of us will unmute you for an answer. You can keep typing your question in the Q&A box during the session. The presenters will try and address as many of them as possible throughout the webinar. I will be there to curate your questions and comments throughout the webinar. Do remember that learning new things is difficult, so please challenge yourself. The webinar will be recorded and will be available on YouTube and Firki website soon. We also have Anu from my team who will be taking down notes for the session, a summary of which will be made available along with the recording and other resources of the webinar. This brings me to the end of my introduction. Thank you so much. I hope all of you have an interesting evening. Over to our speakers now.
Yeah, thank you very much for that introduction, Manasi. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this webinar on supporting first-generation learners in the English language classroom. I'm Sujata Bhosle, and with me today is my colleague, Ashleisha.
Hello, everyone. Nice to be here with you.
Okay. So in this webinar today, we will be
Just a minute.
So in the webinar today, you will have a brief discussion on who first generation learners are and what are their needs. You will also be able to understand some approaches that teachers can use in the English language classroom to support these learners. And you will experience some activities that can make learning English and learning in English more interactive and less intimidating. So, who are first generation learners? Can you type in the chat box and share your thoughts about who are first generation learners? Okay. Those whose ancestors are illiterate, children whose parents have not been to school. Okay, lots of answers coming in here. Students whose families aren't educated, whose parents or generation before has not learned the same. Some have said that whose parents have studied in their mother tongue but not in English. Okay, and they are the first in their family to learn or go to school. Right. Okay. The family's first exposure, whose mother. Okay. So that's right. Many of you have been able to, I think a lot of you are aware of this term. And so we will be looking at, yes. So first generation learners are defined as learners who come from a family background with no previous access to formal education. They are also a majority of these learners are found in government schools in urban, semi-urban and rural communities. And so a lot of these learners rely mostly on their school, on their teachers and peers for their learning. So as some of you have rightly also shared in the chat box, these are learners whose parents are not in a position to follow what is happening in school or react if their children also fall behind. That's one of the features of these learners. And so with very little support at home, they completely depend on the school, the environment in the school and their teachers for their learning. Right. So what are some of the challenges as our challenges as teachers when we have a classroom that has many first generation learners? So we see that uh, the main challenge is to help them learn English in the English language classroom, as well as learn in English, which means that the challenge also is to help students either in mostly for secondary school education, when they start learning other subjects in English, teachers find it a challenge with these learners to teach these learners. And learners also have a challenge in learning these subjects in a language they are not very familiar or comfortable with. And so another challenge is for teachers to understand and adapt to their context. These contexts can be, learners mostly come from multilingual backgrounds and, from contexts like we have already shared, where they have little support at home. And another challenge we find is for teachers, therefore, to make the classrooms a safe space for learning English either as a second language, and in a lot of cases where English is even a third and sometimes perhaps even a fourth language. So I would like to know from you, are these challenges that you identify with? Could you type your answers in the chat box? Are there any additional challenges that you would like to share that you think teachers face? Okay, many of you saying that they do not get the support from parents. Some say that they are reluctant to learn. Others say they don't find any reason to learn in English. Right. No proper surrounding, okay. Lack of proficiency, they lack motivation, some of you say. Okay, lack of interest in the classroom, yes. Gaps in vocabulary, environment of learning, right. So thank you for that. Thank you for sharing these challenges. As you can see, it is a very real situation that, and we would like, teachers to have some support in the way they can address these issues in the classroom. So so today we don't have all the answers to these challenges, but we do hope to provide you some useful approaches that you can adapt for your classroom. So for this, I would I will hand over to Ashlesha, who will take you through some of these approaches.
Thank you, Sujata. All right. So how can we support these learners and make language learning fun, which is one way of getting these learners to be involved in class and also enjoy learning the language. We have on the next slide 3 sample activities that you will see. Okay, you need to think about whether you have used these activities or activities that are similar to these in your own classroom. Okay, you will need to share your answers in the chat box. You can write activity 1, 2, or 3, or it could be more than one activity. So you can do 1, 2, 3, and things like that. Okay, so here are the activities. Spend a minute to read them. And I look forward to your answers in the chat box. So Stephen and Gaurangi have used activity 1. One and 2, interesting.
Many of them have used activity 1 and 2.
Activities 1 and 2 or the like. It's nice to have a lovely interactive bunch. Thank you for sharing your answers. We do have a few 3s as well. People have used the 3rd activity too. Oh. Tasneem says she generally uses the 2nd one. Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. Let's take a look at a few approaches. So I have 3 approaches here on the screen. One is code switching, one is translanguaging, and the 3rd is translation. Are you familiar with these approaches? Are these terms ones that you have heard before? If yes, type a yes in the chat box and let us know which approach you are familiar with. Okay, a mixed bunch of answers there. Some have heard of them, some haven't. Many have heard only of translation. This is something that we have also seen in our during our observations.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you have all, many of you have used activities like 1 and 2 that we showed in the previous slide.
True.
And, okay. But probably not aware that they fall under these approaches.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay.
IB schools have translanguaging. Very interesting. Thanks for sharing that. Excellent. So for those of you who are a little unsure, or for those of you who'd like to just clarify whether you've got the right definition, here are the definitions of code switching, translanguaging, and translation. Spend a minute to read through this.
Paramita Paul has said that she's used activity 2 during our training in Assam by the British Council. Thank you for sharing that, Paramita.
Okay, so let me just go through this very quickly. So as you can see, code switching is when we alternate between 2 or more languages, but this is done in at specific points, and it is governed by certain grammatical structure and conversational rules. Translanguaging, on the other hand, is a broader term, and the language user draws upon everything in their repertoire, be it making signs, using whatever language they know to make meaning and to make sense to the person they're speaking with. Translation is the process of translating something directly from one language to another. So now that we're a little more familiar with these terms, let's go back to our approaches. Can we now match the approach with the term? Can you put your answers into the chat box, please? You can just write it as 1A, 2A, and things like that. Anil's put all of them together. Thanks, Anil.
Yes, Ramachandran too, he has put all the 3 in unable to see.
Super, we have Madhuri who's got them all right. So has Shreya and Sumita. Thank you so much for sharing your answers. Here we are. So identifying parts of a plant where they can switch between English and their home language would be code switching. So they switch and use both languages to describe parts of a plant. Translanguaging is when it's a little more free. It's a free activity where they can use whatever they have in their language repertoire to at least share their thoughts and describe 3D shapes and where they see them around in their real lives. Translation here is definitely, as there's a hint there in the example itself. The learner groups work together and translate different sections of the text and connect it with in a group to form the whole text. Okay, so these are the 3 different approaches that learners use and teachers use as well to express their thoughts and ideas and help them learn better. Sujata, over to you.
Yes. Thank you for that, Ashlesha. And it's really nice to see that many of you are not only doing these activities, but some of you are also aware of the terms. And I think in the exercise where some of you were not aware, but were using it, I'm sure now you know what this activity is called, or this approach is called, that you are using in your classrooms. So before we go into trying out some activities today, I just want to clarify the British Council's position on language learning, which is that at the British Council, we believe in and encourage the use of children's mother tongue or the home language in primary education. We know that learning in the mother tongue, or L1, as we say, is the foundation for learning additional languages in school, and that English cannot replace the local or regional language of education. Now we continue with some activities that you can use and try in the classroom. Over to you again, Ashlesha.
Thank you, Sujata. So we have come up with 3 activities that we thought would be useful. Definitely, these activities can be adapted as we discussed at the beginning. You don't have to use them as it is. It's just something that we'd like to demonstrate, and you can take it from there because you are the best person to judge what works for your students. So let's go ahead. The first activity would involve the approach of code switching. And we are going to demonstrate one of the oldest techniques in the teacher's toolbox, which is storytelling. So what I'm going to do here is a short listening lesson with you. And you are all going to learn a new language. It is Greek, okay? So I will be code switching between 2 languages, and I hope at the end of it, you will learn a few words in Greek, all right? I request you to listen carefully and pay attention to the new words that you come across during the course of the story, okay? Great. So here's our story. There was a man, and he was very upset. This Andreas, this man, he went round and round the kipo behind his house. Kipo is a garden. looking for something. The Andhras got down on his hands and knees and started searching under the Triandafila, the roses. Now the wife of the Andhra, his Yineka, happened to be upstairs in one of the rooms of the house. The Yineka looked out through the bedroom window, Paratiro, and saw her Andhra searching for something in the kipo under the Triandafila. She asked him what he was doing. I'm looking for my house keys, her Andhra shouted. Did you lose your house key down there in the kipo? Under the Triandafila? No, said her Andhras. I didn't lose my key here under Triandafila, but the light is so much better here. That's the little story for you. I want you to now go back, think about what are the different words that you came across. On your screen, you will see a short poll, okay? In the poll, I will give you the Greek words that you hopefully would have heard during the course of the story. And there will be 3 options in English. We need to select the right option to check which word matches the Greek word the best. Okay? Give me a minute while I share the poll. All right. I hope you can all see the poll on the screen. There are 3 options. Choose the one that best fits the word. Excellent. We have some really good answers coming in. Looks like in that short 5 minutes, people have learned some Greek. Okay, we have half of our participants who voted. Looking forward to votes from the rest of them. 164 have voted so far. You don't have to think too much. It's okay if you're wrong. Okay, I'm going to end the polling in another 20 seconds. And because I'm waiting to share the answers with you. All right, thank you very much. Let's end the polling and share the results with everyone. Can you see the answers on the screen? Yes, you're very right. Andreas is man, Gineka is wife, Kipo is the garden, Triandafila is the roses, Kidia is keys, Paratiro the window. Superb. Thank you so much. And you are all great listeners. So I guess it was not all Greek to you. So that is one example of code switching. We did scaffold a little bit at the beginning and give them both the Greek word as well as the English word. But if you notice towards the end, it was just the Greek word that was used in the context. It did have a grammatical structure that it fitted into. It was the English language that formed the basic structure, but the Greek words were introduced quite interestingly, and all of you did understand. If you'd like to know more about this activity, it is available on our Teaching English website. Over to you, Sujata, for the next activity.
Thank you, Ashlesha. That was really interesting, and it was nice to see so many of them got the answers right, almost everybody.
I know.
Did, and they were so fast at it, so fantastic. Right, so moving on. Right. So this is an activity about translingual posters. Now, the poster you see here on the screen is an activity done in a class where the first language of the learners is uh, is Bangla, and the target language here is English. Now, students have made this poster of the human body. They have used cards that they have stuck to label the parts of the body. And the cards have the words in English on one side, and sometimes there's a word in Bangla on the other side. So this is an activity that the teacher has encouraged her students to do in her class. So we have two questions for you here. How do you think the students will benefit from the process of making the poster? And the second question is, once this poster is made, how will students use and benefit from the final poster? Any ideas that you have? And I would like you to share it in the chat box. Okay, so Ananya says they'll be able to translate themselves. Okay, poster will help them. The students will be able to relate to the English words through their L1. Yes, that's right.
It's a hands-on
Family
process.
language
Nice.
will give them support. With first draft, okay, it's better. Association for learning the two languages. Yes. Students, when in groups, will have imaginative ideas. Yes, fantastic. The mother tongue to motivate the learners. Yes. Boost self-confidence, of course. They will relate words with English. That's right. Oh, great. So I think many of you have similar responses, which is that students, while they're working with more than one language, are actually learning about the associations or the notions of equivalence between the two languages, and also using one to learn the other. Learning to learn two languages together, yes. Visuality makes it a better learning. That's an interesting benefit that you've thought of. Fantastic. More vocabulary. If stuck in English, then they will use native words. Okay, an example of joyful learning. That's right. So picture depicted will help them to say their mother tongue, and the teacher can help them to say it in English. But will students also be able to do this themselves? It is less intimidating, okay? Association of words in L1 and L2. Absolutely. So that's one of the main benefits that we have here, that students are able to associate the words in the mother tongue to English. And like many of you have said, that the learning becomes, of English itself becomes less intimidating. And also because it's the students creating this. One of you have said in the chat that it becomes an interactive activity. It is a group activity. Thank you, Pavitra. That encourages peer learning. Absolutely. And also, helps them in their problem-solving skills. Yes, able to learn self, do some problem solving, be more creative. But what about the second question? How will the students use and benefit from the final poster? Any ideas of that? You have this poster, this translingual poster in the classroom. Are there any other ways that we can help them? Or do you think it is just a one-time activity? They create the poster. Okay. Long-term retention through exposure. Okay, while writing, they can use it as a word bank. Oh, great. Yes. It's a visual learning aid, yes. They can reuse it matching the cards. Excellent. That was a wonderful suggestion. Sorry, I missed the name, but thank you. That was a really nice suggestion. Jumble some words. Absolutely. Oh, all of you have some really creative ideas of what you can do. They will be happy to.
Yeah, that's what this webinar is all about, figuring out how you can adapt it and use it to your benefit and use your creativity as well to help your learners.
Helpful rearrange words, matching activities. Yeah, that's right. So like some of you have said here, one of you said that you can mix up the cards and then ask the students to, go up to the poster and put it back in the right place. Okay, describing words. Okay, they will learn it by doing it. Right. And also, they can say even do this as a pair activity where they can test their partner on the language, a pair going up to this poster and asking, looking at the Bangla word and to see if they can tell the English word. And if the student doesn't, he can just flip over the card and look at the English word over there. Yes, can be used as a game. You can even create a question. Excellent. Yes, you can create a question around it or some questions around it. And so a question here then is, do you think this is something that you can use in when students learn other subjects, something similar for the learning of other subjects or the teaching of other subjects? That's okay, it can be done in maths. Okay, science, parts of a plant or leaf, other lexical sets. Yes, thank you, Paramita. Parts of a flower, for example. Beautiful examples. Yes, students learn Gujarati or Hindi. Yes. Science and history, geography too. Okay, okay. Right. So many of you agree that it can be, this is an idea that can be used with other subjects as well, where students are learning the subject in English, even though the main home language or their L1 is something other than English, of course, it's possible for social science. Yes, that's right. Right. So moving on, that's, I think all of you have, yeah. So when we'll move on to our next activity. Now, what you see here on your screens is a text from a geography lesson of class 6. Now, please assume now for this activity, please here that you are teachers teaching a class 6 text from geography. Your learners' first language is Hindi, and most of your learners have had Hindi as the medium of instruction, say, till class 5. Now, do you think your learners will find this text easy? No. Okay. Not much, some of you have said. Right, most of you have said, okay. So many of you are saying that they would not find it easy. So what are the words here that they might find challenging? what are some of the words in this text that they would find challenging? Reservoirs, fauna, harnessed, storehouse, irrigation, okay, terraces, right, okay. Right, so many of you have said that have found many words here which you feel that your learners might find difficult. So in the next slide, right, so here is a slide. Now, let's assume you are now in the student's role. The previous slide had you as a teacher, but let's assume now that you are the class 6 learner, and this is a text from geography. Again, you have backgrounds, your home language is Hindi. And so you are given this text and you are given some keywords that have been translated. So for example, harnessed is dohan, cultivation is kheti, river valleys is nadi ghatiyan, fauna is jivo, flora is vanaspatiyan. So now take a minute to read this text and see if you can understand it now. With the help of the keywords. Right. Okay, some of you have even said that most are saying that it is easy now, but there are some who say that they may still find a problem with a few words. Okay. Right. Right. Some of you are saying that simple and easy language. Some may not find the Hindi words itself easy. Yes, it is a possibility. Okay. Right. Okay, so some have said that you could add more words, but even then it's still a good idea. Okay. So thank you. Lots of feedback on that. Most of them saying that it's useful. It's a much better way. Now look at this slide. In the next slide, this is something that we have seen some teachers do in their classrooms. That's the text, and so will your learners if you read the translation, do you think this translated text will help your learners understand the content? That's right. It's a word-to-word translation. And so it does not give the correct meaning. It can confuse them. Right. That's right. So some of you have rightly said here that literal translation, translating it word to word, is not going to be helpful. What about, but if you compare this to what you have done in the previous slide, right. previous one is better, yeah. Right. So when we give them a few words, a few keywords with their translations, it helps the students, problem solve and think critically. Whereas it also makes it more meaningful, and students may get the right meaning. That's right. And if this is done as a pair activity or a group activity, do you think it will be helpful? Where the words, where some keywords have been translated and they do this as a group or a pair activity. That's right. So again, translation activities, if they are planned well, they can be made, if they are made more interactive, it can encourage, a lot of discussion amongst the learners. Yes, it encourages discussions, and they can also learn about some of the nuances of the two languages. That's right. It can create an interest in learning too. Absolutely. Yeah. Can also share different ideas, and collaborative learning can happen. Thank you very much for that. Yes. Right. So also, this is also a way where you can build on the students' prior knowledge, because it is quite likely that, some of them may know some of the words that were given in the initial English text. That's right. Right. Okay, so the second one, this one where you do a literal translation is something that is not going to be useful and something that we should not be doing in our classrooms. So these were the three approaches that, that's right, inquiry-based learning, yeah. Right. So these were the three main approaches that we wanted to bring to you today. And so moving on, we would like you to reflect on the three approaches and the activities that we have done.
Hello, everyone. So at the end of every interesting session is always a reflection. That's the heart of it all. So we have three simple questions here. I need you to look back at the three activities that you saw and experienced and decide how these three activities can hone 21st century skills. How will they make your learners think critically, help them problem solve, empower them to use what they already have to do better. Sujata also asked you about group and pair work and how you could use that in your classrooms to set up activities such as these. And definitely these activities were done for you. You know what's best for your learners, and so you need to adapt them to suit your needs. I'd love to share, love for you to share all of these ideas in a single spot, so we have it together and we can go back to it and refer to it. Okay, so I have created a Padlet for you. The Padlet has three separate columns for each of these questions. I'd like you to just add a short note. It's like a little post-it note, and share your thoughts about each of these three questions. Okay, I will share the Padlet link with you in the chat box. If you can just click on the link and go to the Padlet, it's fairly simple to use. You just have to click on the little plus signs to add a short note in. Can you see the link in the chat box? You can also see it on your screen. You can type it in if you like. Sujata, is the screen visible yet? There seems to be a...
no, there is a lag.
There seems to be a lag.
Just give it a few
yeah,
seconds.
Ashwath has put it up.
Okay.
This is the Padlet. Let me pull it up to see what it looks like. You will have to click on the link to access the Padlet. And once you get onto the Padlet, please click on the little plus signs which correspond to each question and add your reflections in the Padlet. Can you give me a yes in the chat box if you've managed to access the link? I'm going to pull up the Padlet here and let's see if people have managed to access it and add a few thoughts there. Mansi or Ashwath, is it possible? Please.
I think Ashlesha, you were.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Sorry, there was a slight connectivity issue.
Yeah, we can see. We could see now.
There seems to be some problem. Can you see the screen? Can you see the Padlet now?
This Padlet will remain open, so you could continue filling it in with your reflections. Fill in with your reflections till the end of this week. Also, we're just trying to show you what it looks like,
and it's really great because if you add what you have, how you can adapt these activities or use them in your classroom for different subjects, it will benefit around 300 teachers, which is a great way to collaborate and work together on teaching better.
Some really good ideas. Some of you saying that use dialogue and images from the text to connect and recapitulation of the lesson. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Mr. Rajput has shared that translanguaging is very helpful. So can you tell us if there is any translanguaging activity that you, any activity using that approach that you're currently doing in your classroom or you would do?
Ashwath, the newer answers will be shared at the top of the Padlet. So if you can just go to the top, we'll be able to see the latest updates on each. Yeah, thank you so much. Interesting. Learners will feel free to do activities in class. It will make the class a lot more comfortable. That's where we were heading to. Your classroom, it will be a safer place where you can use both languages to learn better. Superb. A role play, that would be really interesting. So you could role play and learn things, code switch, use translanguaging. Oh, someone shared a picture. That's really nice.
Yes.
You can do that, yes.
That's an, looks like another example of the translingual poster. That's really good. But I think, yeah, it used Hindi and English. Great.
Poems. Can you elaborate on how you'd use poems? It would be lovely to hear. People are usually a little wary about using poetry. It's a lovely medium to use though. Poems and comic strips, very nice. It would be lovely if you could elaborate and just with a short line or two on how you would set it up.
Okay, and there's also some interesting reflections on how these activities can hone critical thinking and problem solving. There's someone here saying that they will, learners will feel free to do these activities in class as they feel connected to the first language. Yes. Yes, students could write key words in any language that they are confident in, absolutely.
Someone's also mentioned about a history lesson that could be adapted. You could probably use a role play to enact a scene from history.
Yeah. And Saraswati Prabhakar has said that slap the board for abbreviations.
Slap
Okay.
the board is the favorite.
Yes. Through games, okay, short plays and poetry. Many of you have shared that you could do this with poetry. It would be nice to know if you could share how you would be doing this. Right. Great. So, like we said, please keep adding your reflections in the Padlet. We would be very interested to see how some of you are adapt these activities. How do you think these activities can hone critical thinking skills? And how you could adapt some of these approaches or activities that we have shown or talked about today in your classrooms.
And spend a minute to read what the others have written as well.
Yes,
because you can look back and learn so much from your peers. Because if they've tried and tested an activity, it could just as well work for you too. So please spend that time to read all of the things that your peers have written.
that's right. So,
Okay, let me see if I go back to the PPT. Hopefully it shares better now.
so there are some more strategies that you could use in your classroom.
Mansi, I'm sorry, there's something wrong. Can you please share the PPT? The slide after let's reflect, please.
Okay, just a
Thank
second.
you. Slide number 23.
Right.
Thanks,
So
Mansi.
some of the strategies that you can all use as teachers in your classrooms with learners is, continue to build the teacher's awareness, knowing what your learners' home languages are, where do they use their home languages, and why do they use it. If you keep building awareness of this, is a useful strategy in planning any of these activities that you have seen here using these approaches. It's also important to build the learner's awareness, because it is important that you establish and maintain a classroom culture which allows learners to use their home languages when needed, if they are not able to express themselves in the target language or in English. Uh, Encouraging learners' reflections on what they already know and what they are learning is also a useful strategy to use while using any of these approaches. Uh, Another purposeful use of the code switching, translanguaging, or translation, an example of this would be teachers using the preview, view, review method. This is where teachers can preview the lesson in their home language of the students uh, and view or deliver the main lesson in the target language, and then again review it in the home language of the learners. So this again helps in a positive engagement of students with learning either English or learning the subject being taught in English. Right. You can find some more of this on the next slide, please, Mansi. you could find some of these strategies in a free resource book that is available on the Teaching English site. It is using multilingual approaches, moving from theory to practice. And there are, of course, many resources on these three approaches that we have talked about today, also available on the Teaching English website. The next slide, Mansi. So these are some of the references that we have used for our presentation today. So we would like to thank you all for making time to come to our to this presentation. And we would like to hear any questions that you may have from the presentation today. I can see that there are some already in the Q&A here, so we will try to answer as many as we
Absolutely. We have about 8 questions here and a couple that came into the chat box. So I can share each question one by one. There's a question about how to explain various grammar concepts to students without getting into grammatical terms. There was also another question in the chat box about saying that one of the biggest struggles of a teacher is to explain how grammar works in English, because it works differently in each native language. So anything you can share about that?
Right. So I would teaching grammar through the rules is the grammar translation method that we do not advocate anymore. It is more of a communicative approach that we encourage teachers to use with these students. And by incorporating the L1, we are also saying that the focus is more on fluency rather than accuracy. So if we build on the fluency of learners as they get confident in using the language or engaging with the language, is how we can introduce them to the grammar concepts in a way that they notice the grammar. Also, when you are incorporating the L1 or the home language, is where students, especially at a certain age, I would say, start noticing the differences, and that helps them and encourages them to understand the grammatical structure in some ways. If there's anything else that you would like to add, Ashlesha, to this?
Yeah, just a small thing. So if you actually give them a meaningful context at the beginning and draw out the grammar rules from them, you're actually building on what they already know, what they have understood from that meaningful context, and that's what's going to make it stick. So grammar rules shouldn't probably be looked at first. You should look at giving them that meaningful context that Sujata was talking about, and they will definitely be able to highlight the rules from there. It's something that has been tried and tested, and some of you asked for resources where you can that you can read and look at. There's lots available on the Teaching English website, and you can read how you can do this as well, because the how is very important. It's easy to talk about it, but how you do it is something that you need to look at. So there are resources and lesson plans that you can look at and then adapt it for your learners. So look at teaching grammar in a meaningful communicative context.
Great. Thank you so much. Another question is, what should be the language of instruction in a classroom that which has students that struggle with English?
So as we have already said, in the primary, we say that we should encourage the home language. Where secondary is concerned, where they sometimes it's either in the 6th or even higher classes, or in some cases it could even be in higher education that they make this switch of learning in English. It is the approaches that we talked about actually are some of the ways in which we can use both languages to teach a concept. The concept could be in any subject like history or geography or science. So it would be, again, like I said, the teacher should be, the teacher should build awareness of the learner's linguistic background to understand make this decision of how to do this, which are by incorporating the L1 in the teaching, in the use of L2 in the classroom, or in the use of the second language in the classroom.
Great, thank you, ma'am. There are two questions about what is the difference between translating and languaging. Can I say translating is translanguaging in a sentence?
There's actually a really good reference that we've added because we anticipated this question. And this is a very common question, something that we looked at ourselves, in fact. So it might be well worth your time to spend a little bit reading up on these articles that we've given as references. Prerna, you will be sharing them with the participants, right? Prerna?
Yeah.
So there's actually an article from Oxford which discusses each of these activities and compares and contrasts. So spend a bit of time reading through that. I'm sure your questions will be answered.
Yes, the references that we have used at the end have all this. Some of you in the chat box are also talking about these references and not finding them. We will be sharing it at the end of the webinar.
Is Prerna Prerna, are you there? Or Mansi?
No, it's Mansi.
Okay, someone has also asked whether we can adapt these activities for an older set of learners. Yes, you can definitely increase or decrease the complexity of these activities based on the level of your learners, their background, their abilities. It can all be adapted based on what you believe your learners and what you know of your learners. Definitely, you can adapt these activities. It would be nice if you could think of some ways to adapt it for different learners and share them in the Padlet. It would definitely benefit everyone of your peers.
And I can see, also I can see that somebody is asking the difference between translanguaging and code switching. So code switching, or for that, though they look similar and they feel similar, but translanguaging actually is more complex than just switching from the vocabulary of one language to another, like Ashlesha did in the first activity of the mixed storytelling. Translanguaging involves understanding some of the different features of the two languages that are being presented or used in the classroom, whereas code switching is, which we do quite often in our classrooms and also in our personal lives, is, switching the words of one language to another, switching words of vocabulary, one language to another. But translanguaging is more nuanced, and that is why as these activities, if a teacher uses these activities continuously, consistently, learners are able to make out those differences in the language features.
Amazing. Thank you, ma'am. There's also a question about how can we adapt these activities for an older set of students?
I think Ashlesha just answered that, right?
Yeah, I just answered that, Mansi.
Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry. There's no power here. Okay.
Sorry, go ahead, Mansi.
Okay. Will error correction help in teaching grammar rather than teaching the rules? Error correction exercises they're talking about.
I think definitely, but I would still do some error correction within meaningful context. For example, if during the activity you have heard some of the sentences that they have used which may have not been entirely correct, perhaps you can take those sentences, put them up on the board and get them to try and see what's wrong, and actually build on what they already know, kind of point to the rules, ask them if they can figure it out themselves. That would enable them to think critically rather than you spoon feeding them with all the answers right at the beginning. If they really don't know it, that's when you step in and you probably would have to error correct. But that is an important aspect of teaching. It's just how you do it which makes all the difference.
Yeah.
Great. Great.
There are some questions on translation I can see.
Priya has added something saying it's also important to highlight what they've done well to give them that confidence and empower them to learn more. Thank you, Priya.
Yeah, thank you, Priya.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, ma'am. Do you have any teacher training module wherein teachers aren't confident themselves?
Sorry, wherein teachers are?
So I think the question basically means that given that it's hard for teachers to teach this as well, are there any teacher training modules for teachers who are also sort of new to English language teaching?
I'm still not very clear about the question, but if it is
So
about...
I think that's something which is an allied question, Mansi. Perhaps you can write into the address that we're going to share later, and they can get some more information there.
Sure, absolutely. How do I get my users to use advanced vocab learned as students tend to use the easiest synonyms compared to the advanced language?
I think it's all about encouragement to some extent and asking them remember that word you learned, what was it that you can use instead of this word? Can you try using different words and phrases so that your language gets better? It's all about encouragement, and you need to build their confidence there and hope that they will try themselves and use words that they otherwise wouldn't, because it's something that we all do. You fall back on what you are comfortable with and what you know. So how can you not expect them to do it? Yeah.
Yeah, and a review of the vocabulary from time to time is also a useful technique for students to, use the vocabulary in whatever activity they are doing. And plus also a variety of tasks where you can do this review of vocabulary, that can also help. Yes. I think there was a question.
What is the difference?
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead, ma'am. There's a question that you've wanted to answer. Please go ahead.
No, there's been some questions on translation which I would like to address here. Somebody saying that instead of a word-by-word translation, will an overall translation work? Now, again, if this is something that the teacher is going to do completely, which is, I think what you mean over here is summarizing or paraphrasing what that English text was. What do you think? Do you think it's a good idea that the teachers do it for the students? Having seen this activity, I think not. So translation per se can be, as I had said during the activity, if it is planned well, it can be done well. In the sense, it need not be word-to-word translation. Like in our experience of having seen an English class being conducted in Hindi, this is what we saw, a literal translation happening. And so there were a lot of, incoherences, I could say, in the way it was being done. The sentences weren't coherent enough and all that. So with the strategies that we have suggested here is some ways in which you can involve students rather than give them the entire translated text.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you, ma'am. How do you identify a first generation English speaker or first generation learner, and how do you help them? These are two separate questions, but they're linked.
Identifying first generation learners, as we said at the beginning of the webinar, we come to know if parents have either not attended school at all, or they may have attended, but they could have dropped out after class 8. So those learners are considered as first generation learners. Uh, and also there are these other added factors where uh, since parents are not literate, they are also not aware of how to support learners at home, or they may not have an understanding of if the learners are falling back in school. They may also not have an understanding of that. So it's teachers can identify, or I think in India, the school system identifies them in this way.
Great.
I can see a question here about how much mother tongue to use in the classroom. I think I just saw that, how much mother tongue. So, what we are saying is that that with these activities where you have used the mother tongue, code switching, and purposeful code switching, I should say, or purposeful translanguaging and purposeful translation. It's about making the environment, the learning environment, less intimidating and therefore a safe space. So I'm sure as with these techniques and approaches, students will find learning of English and learning in English less intimidating, and that as a teacher you will be able to see the changes on when you realize that they may not require L1 as, say, perhaps they did at the beginning of a term. So what we are saying is encouraging the use of L1 in order to learn L2, or in order to learn concepts that are being taught in L2.
Yeah, multilingualism is in. It's a great way to learn, and we should definitely encourage teachers to do this.
Also, there is some research.
Thank you so much.
There is also some research from studies done in India. Many Indian researchers, as well as from abroad, have also brought this to the fore, that there is a reluctance for teachers to use the L1 especially, and this was an interesting bit that I read, that especially they don't encourage their students to use it. It is noticed that teachers do use it in their teaching. However, they don't encourage learners to learn use the L1. So these techniques or approaches actually encourage it in both ways, in teaching as well as in students' learning.
Great. We have a couple of questions from the FB chat window, FB live chat window. Would it be possible to share some thoughts on how we can continue to keep the first generation learners in touch with English during this time, where our classrooms are closed? We do not do online classes, as most of the students do not have smartphones or computers.
That's a tough question.
Yes,
because
that is
it's
a
access
tough question.
to learners.
Also, a scenario that is, which dominates the learning scenario these days. There are no easy answers here. I think if, yes, perhaps they may not even have phones. So if I were to, of course, one technique is if they do have phones, there are some techniques to use, the SMS chat techniques, etc. And there is an entire page dedicated to remote learning on the Teaching English website that I would encourage you all to go through and read. This was created especially for the current scenario, where many teachers find themselves either teaching online or wanting to find ideas on how to make online teaching a success. But there are also in the same link, you will find some activities that if you are, if it is possible for teachers to reach out to parents to do, or an older sibling to do, it also has some activities that they have suggested that learners can do at home. So I would, we will share the link here in the chat so that you could see that now.
Thank you, ma'am. Another question is, will language skills influence critical thinking and problem solving?
Sorry, I'm sorry, can you repeat that question, Nancy?
Sure. The question is, will language skills influence critical thinking and problem solving skills in children?
Yes, since so language is at the heart of the curriculum, or we could say, it's the paper on language learning talks about language across the curriculum. So it is at the heart of developing these skills as well. So if students know the language well in which they are learning, that is what it would it will help them to when use understand concepts well enough to be able to use critical thinking and problem solving. And if teachers also are able to encourage learners engagement through some of the pair and group activities through the approaches that we have suggested, that can also improve their critical thinking and problem solving. So definitely language is at the heart of learning to learn, as they say. And also, so if that goes well, and critical thinking and problem solving is, of course, and part of that.
Absolutely. Thank you, ma'am. There's a question also on how can these strategies be used if the teacher teaching doesn't know the native language of the students? Are there any like what are the advantages and disadvantages if the teacher doesn't know the native language?
So if this is well, then it, especially if it is a scenario where a lot of learners don't know either, say, even the regional language, which perhaps is the medium of instruction, then yes, it could be a disadvantage. Uh, so, the teacher will have to, with the help of peers, I assume, will have to, build her awareness of the learner's language and see how she could do this. Perhaps there are other teachers in the school who could help her with this. That would be useful. And sometimes, of course, students may know the regional language, may be slightly more comfortable with that rather than with the with English as an L2 or L3. So to if she could exploit those opportunities in that language, that would also help.
Great. How there are two questions about evaluation actually. One is how do we modify evaluation criteria while incorporating these approaches, especially in an English language class? That's the English language class. Another is during current scenario where everything is online, how do you assess their skills in limited time frame? So those are two questions about evaluation.
Sorry, I'm afraid I lost some connectivity there. Ash, can you address that?
Okay.
No, instead of Mansi repeating it again for me. I'm sorry.
No worries. Ashleisha, you're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
I just
need to unmute. My Zoom network, my network is playing up. I'm very, very sorry. Yeah, this actually, again, I'd like to bring you back to the remote teaching series that we've just put up. There's a whole, there's a little video or an audio also given on how you can conduct assessments remotely and move to a more formative approach rather than the summative approach that we normally are used to. So why don't you take a look at that? It's really detailed and it gives you examples of different skills that you can assess and how you can assess them. Mati, sorry, am I audible?
Yeah, yeah, we heard that. Thank you. What is the difference between translanguaging and code switching?
I think I just addressed that, Mansi.
Yeah, Mati, we addressed that in fact twice, and they can refer to the references to read up more about this.
Okay. 1 second. Would there be, are there any more activities that you can refer to for students who seem, for whom it's hard to learn? They've written, which will be focused on slow learners. I'm guessing that anybody who's finding it hard to learn.
I think you would have to vary. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, Ashlesha, we can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, so I think you always have a differentiated batch of learners in your class. You're never going to have everyone at the same level. So you could have some learners that need support and some learners that need more challenge. So one is identifying the difference in the learners, and two is perhaps grading your language and grading your activities for either learners. And if you have learners who need more challenge and finish a little bit faster, you can give them something more and ask them to, you know, have better use of their time with a little, with activities that might challenge them a little bit better. Whereas give more time to the ones who need support.
Great. That is actually all. The rest of the questions we currently have are similar to the ones I have already asked. There is a question, what are the benefits of doing SETA course? If you would like to address that.
Sorry, the benefits of, is it there in the...
Mansi, I think that's another allied question, which we can probably write into the email address given to help them find out more about the CELTA course. Mansi, are you there?
I think Mansi dropped off because of some internet issue.
Yeah.
We would like to thank Sujata and Ashlesha for being generous with their time and expertise today. I request both of you to also quickly share your thoughts on the webinar today.
To share our thoughts on the webinar?
Yes, please.
Sujata, go ahead, Sujata.
Yeah, so this, thank you very much again for being part of this and making time for the webinar today. I hope some of the approaches are something that were new to you, and even if they weren't, I hope that some of the activities that we have used today can be useful in your classes by adapting them. We are also quite thankful for the kind of interaction we have had today. When we were doing those activities, that was really amazing. So thank you for that. And I can say that some of you have more questions. I have added some links in the chat box, but we will be sharing this when we send across the PPT to you. Also, some more feedback. I think Prerna will share the email ID where you can write to us. Thank you very much.
And
Lovely.
just something to add to what Sujata said, I think it's been a great learning experience for us preparing for the webinar for all of you. And I'm really glad that it has helped you and it has helped us learn as well. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. We will be going ahead and exploring more based on some of the questions that you have asked us. It's really lovely. Thank you so much.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Sujata. Thank you so much, Ashlesha. Our next webinar is scheduled to take place on July 16, that is tomorrow, and it's on art in the times of Corona, from doing well to well-being. It will be designed in partnership with Slam Out Loud. The registration link for the same will be shortly pasted in the chat window. Now, before you leave, please take a minute to give us feedback on your learning experience on our webinar today. This will help us grow and improve our resources for you. You can interact with our presenters, Sujata and Ashlesha, at teachenglish.india@britishcouncil.org. Please follow Teach English India on Twitter and Teach English in India on Facebook for more updates. Thank you and have a good evening. All this information will be shortly pasted in the chat window as well.